History Things podcast, a conversational approach to discussing social, industrial, maritime, music, and military history. Join us and our special guests as we dive down the rabbit holes of your favorite stories from the past. Follow the History Things podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or online at Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be sure to leave a review and a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app. Pat and Parker are coming right up. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the show.
Well, that was the most powerful night that I've ever spent in a major league ballpark, was 2-1, 3-1. And even though we kind of knew what was going to happen, you know there's not going to be like a walk-off homer. We know where the drama is coming, but we didn't even know what the drama was going to be. But you really had to be there for the anticipation of everything, the buildup, the home runs that he hit. In 2-1, 2-9, and then 2-1, 3-0, and then, of course, in 2-1, 3-1. I had a dear friend of mine, Bob Elliott, who's in the Baseball Writers Hall of Fame, like I am. He went in years and years ago. And he didn't know Ripken particularly well, and he just kind of parachuted in on the morning of 2-1, 3-1. So he comes up to me, and he's a really great writer and a dear friend and a very sensitive guy. But he says, Tim, I don't get it. I don't feel it. I don't see it. I don't get it. Like, what's the big deal here? We know what's going to happen. And I said, Boxer, I don't know what's going to happen. But let's wait till the 5th inning. Let's wait until the game is made official. And then we'll figure it out from there. So, of course, game becomes official. Ripken makes the unforgettable 22-minute run around the stadium, pointing at people, patting his heart. People are literally weeping in the crowd. And it was one of the most amazing human moments that I have ever seen in a major league park, if not the most human moment I've ever seen. So when it's all over, they've started play again after 22, 25 minutes. And Bob Elliott, my dear friend, comes up to me, Toronto baseball writer. He's got tears in his eyes, and he says, okay, I get it. I get it. I get it.
What began on May 30th, 1982, and continues September 6th, 1995. This game, with the Angels trailing, is now in the books.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the History Things podcast, a cool and quick bonus episode for you this early autumn. Joining me as always, but this time from a undisclosed location, is the co-host of the show, the ambassador from Maine, Parker Russell. How are you?
Doing wonderful. How are you? Is that the Frederick Keys I see?
Yes, it is. This baseball hat is a Frederick Keys hat. Are we going to be discussing,
let's see, you have some baseball stuff on. I have some.
You have some baseball stuff on. That's right.
Are we going to be talking about baseball?
We're going out to the ball game today. It's a very exciting episode, Parker, because as I have probably poured out of my body ever since you and I have known each other, I love baseball. I love the game. I love its history, its majesty, everything about it. I'm not just a fan of the New York Yankees. I'm a fan of the game itself. And very recently, I got to live in some nostalgia, revisit the past, both for a big moment in Major League Baseball, but also just kind of for me as a person, as a young lad. And I thought it would be really cool, since we had a conversation about the magic of baseball earlier this year with Baseball Hall of Fame writer, ESPN commentator Tim Kurkjian. I thought, since I just experienced this magic, and then I got to live in the memory of the time I experienced that nostalgia as a kid, I thought, let's have a chat about Cal Ripken Jr., his Iron Man streak, and the moment that he played in 2,131 games. Now, the record is 2,632 games, I do believe. I know that it is not 2,131, but this moment on September 6, 1995 was just one of these very powerful, very electric moments for me as a young man. I'm 9 years old, and I just thought,
I was 806.
You were how old?
806.
Right, because you were already an old man. But this was just such a moment for me that it kind of just it stayed with me as the years went by in my life. So, Parker, I know you're not a huge baseball fan, and I know that in 1995 up in Maine, the Baltimore Orioles were likely not a relevant topic. If you guys were paying attention to baseball, it was probably the Boston Red Sox. But was there a moment in 1995 where this popped up on your radar at all, or did you
this made national news?
Okay.
I mean, this is a big deal. What I love, and I'm just going back to something that you said there about the record, still held by Cal, and probably always will be. He didn't just break the record and stop, right? Like, he kept going to 2,632 games.
Many more seasons.
I think that's just amazing. I mean, what we're about ready to hear is that this guy is absolutely incredible. Right. The stories, the stuff that he endured, baseball players of his generation and before, the things that they endured to create the records that are still on the books. And in many cases, they did it in a lot of catastrophic pain and through catastrophic pain. These people are superhuman. It's quite incredible. I'm very excited.
So joining us today, once again, to talk baseball magic, but to specifically focus on the streak of Cal Ripken Jr. as he broke Lou Gehrig's consecutive games played record, to talk about just sort of what it meant for baseball in the moment, what it has helped baseball come back to, and how we were revisiting it 30 years later. We're joined by that very same Hall of Fame writer. We're joined by that very same commentator, at least for now, for ESPN. We'll touch on that topic in another day. Well, Tim Kurkjian, welcome back to the History Things podcast. Let's talk about that streak. What a recounting of that. So I remember it myself very fondly. I was 9 years old. I remember sitting in Gaithersburg on my living room floor of my parents' house, watching it on HTS, a very long defunct channel that I'm sure you'll remember. But I very, very vividly remember listening to John Miller on the call and just that whole pageantry. So recently I got to experience the 30th anniversary game about it, and I started to just feel all of this magic that we spent a lot of time talking about with you earlier in our season. And I figured, man, as we head into the postseason, as a Yankee fan, believe it or not, despite the Orioles jersey, this is my Cal Ripken jersey. I feel like I need to put some good magic into the universe. And this was just a very special experience as a kid. And then 30 years later, Tim, it was an insane experience to kind of go through that game and see both the nostalgia and then the game itself. So first, let's talk about Lou Gehrig for a moment. The Iron Horse, the guy that held this record before Cal Ripken. What did he mean in a short sense to baseball? What was that record like, especially when it was set at the end of the 1930s and baseball was a very different baseball than it is today?
Right. Well, first off, Lou Gehrig is the greatest first baseman of all time. And I don't think there's a close second. He is arguably one of the four greatest hitters of all time. And if he hadn't gotten sick and his streak ended when it did and how it did, if he had played another 3 years, which he was certainly capable of doing, he would have retired as the all-time leader in RBIs and runs scored, which back then, and I still think today, are two pretty important categories. And again, back then, guys played Everett Scott, people like that in 1,200 straight games. So this wasn't completely out of the ordinary. But once Gehrig got into the upper 1,000s, then to 2,000, people started looking and saying, no one's ever going to come close to this. Because even though everybody played all the time back then, and, if you were hurt, you played through it back then, Gehrig really represented just a different kind of baseball player, one that was not only great, but really cared about winning. You know, there are only two players in Major League history who, in the games they played in, their teams were over 500 games, over 500.
Wow.
One, of course, is Lou Gehrig, and the other is Derek Jeter. So the guy with the most games above 500 in his major league career is Lou Gehrig, which tells you, A, of course, he played on some great teams, but part of the reason they were great was that he was on the team. And he
Absolutely.
was this incredible first baseman. And I'm sorry, fellas, I get in trouble when I say things like this, but Lou Gehrig was 205 pounds. He was as strong as an ox. If we dropped him into today's game with that swing, which is technically pretty damn good, and we gave him a month, 2 months to figure out how to hit 98 and how to hit a slider and a split and all that, I have no doubt that he would be a really good hitter today. Really good hitter. But that's who he was back then. He was a great hitter back then who played every single day. Basically, his entire career was the streak, which is just unbelievable that he could accomplish something like that.
So obviously Cal Ripken doesn't hit the league and get to May 30th of 1982 and go, today we're going to start to chase down Lou Gehrig, right? I feel like approaching one of those records is just kind of happenstance, and it just comes through, like you were saying at the introduction here, just kind of like that gritty, reliable, determined work ethic, things like that. So obviously the streak starts in 1982. What is Cal like as a younger player? Were you covering him? Were you doing writing of the Baltimore Orioles, things like that in the early 80s? So were you around at the time the streak started?
I was not. I was there in 81, but that really doesn't count because none of this really counts until Ripken establishes himself as a big leaguer in 1982 and he won the Rookie of the Year. I was around for some of his games in 81, but this is long before he became Cal Ripken. But the young Cal Ripken was like the old Cal Ripken. I've never seen anyone who loved to play as much as Cal Ripken did. And I'm not just talking about baseball. As I've told you guys, raging conflict of interest, but I played basketball with him many times, and I could not believe how much he enjoyed the competition. And if you screwed up and you were on his team, you might get a stern look from him like, that's not how we're going to play this year. So that's kind of nothing has changed about him. I think I told you, Patrick, that a few years ago I ran into Joe Orsulak, former Oriole, and somehow we got to talking and Ripken's name came up, and this is just a few years ago. And Orsulak, I didn't know this, was a 3-state ping pong champion in high school. So he ends up in his 50s playing ping pong with Cal Ripken. And he beat Ripken in 24 games in a row. And Ripken would not leave the house until he won. And as Joe Orsulak said, he beat me in the 25th game at 2:00 in the morning, and then he went home. So that's who he was. That's who he was back then. So anyone who thinks on May 30th, 1982, he said, I'm going to play every game for the next 16 years. No, he showed up every day ready to go, could not wait to play, could not wait to compete. And this is, 3 years later, opening day of 85, he rolls his ankle making a double play against the Rangers. I think I've got all this right. And I mean, black and blue, the sprained ankle all the way around it. The next day is an off day, and they tell him he finishes the game, of course, even though he rolls his ankle like Yordan Alvarez did the other day, and he's going to be out for quite some time. Couldn't even look at that. Same thing happened to Ripken. So they send him to the hospital, and the doctor says, all right, you have to stay off of this ankle for 2 weeks. You have to use crutches for 2 weeks. And they don't have a game the next day, so Ripken says, all right, I'll do exactly what you said. He gets to the car after leaving the hospital. He throws his crutches away before he gets into the car. And then he goes back to the ballpark and gets treatment on his ankle. The whole next day, no game that day, treatment on his ankle, and then he played the day after. Look, tiniest level possible. I have rolled both of my ankles once each so badly that I've never, ever forgotten how much that hurt. And I couldn't do anything, run, walk quickly for a month. So it was the same thing that he had. I said, Rip, look, I've had this before. How could you possibly play 48 hours after that? He goes, oh, it wasn't a big deal. I just wrapped it up really tight and it was fine. No, it wasn't fine. Only you could wrap your ankles up tight like that and play 48 hours after rolling your ankle that badly.
Well, thank goodness he was able to do that so we could have that nostalgic experience and all that. So is this what all the Ripken boys were like? Cal's dad, Cal's brother, Cal's son, even things like that? Are they all this kind of just determined to play because they love it, they're into it?
Well, Cal Sr. is the toughest man I've ever met in a major league uniform in my life, and that includes his son, Cal Jr. Cal Sr. threw BP one night at Fenway Park, and he loved to throw BP, and it was part of his job. He's the third base coach, and he throws BP every night. So he gets hit with a line drive in batting practice. I mean, right in the face with a line drive. There is blood spurting out of his face. He falls to the ground like a sack of potatoes because nobody can stand up after getting hit in the face during BP with a line drive. Richie Bancells, the trainer, comes running out on the field at full speed because he thinks, oh my God, Rip Sr. is dead. He gets to the mound, and by that point, Rip Sr. has gathered himself. He's standing up on the mound. He is still bleeding profusely. He looks at Richie Bancells and says, what the hell are you doing out here? I haven't finished my round. He finishes his round of batting practice, goes to the hospital, gets stitched up, and is back in the third base coaching box in the third inning. So that's all you need to know about Cal Jr. is that his father is Cal Sr. And Jr. told me a story once where Sr. played soccer, was a great soccer player, and he played into his mid-50s, and he would play midfield for an entire game, this is in the offseason, against a bunch of 25-year-olds, and he's 55. So he plays like crazy for the entire game and is running by people even though he's 30 years older. After one of the games, Ripken told me that Sr. says to Jr., come on downstairs, I got to show you something. He has a blood blister under his right big toe. I don't know if you guys have ever had a blood blister, but they're unbelievably painful. Yeah. So Sr. takes Jr. downstairs. Jr.'s like 8 years old. He takes out a power drill and drills a hole into his right big toe. Blood comes spurting out like a geyser. My God. He looks at his son and he goes, oh, that feels so good because the pressure had been released. So when you wonder where does it come from, that's where it comes from.
Dad is tough as nails. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that's who Cal Sr. was. He handed that to all of his children. I mean, Billy Ripken was one of the toughest people I've ever met, but he got hurt a lot, and I can't explain why because his pain tolerance was ridiculously high. But there was nobody like Cal Jr. because his pain tolerance was off the chart. Mm-hmm. But as Rene Gonzalez, who played for the Orioles, told me once, this guy is an alien. You can't hurt him. They used to play a game where 5 guys would jump Ripken occasionally before a game and wrestle him to the ground and like punch him all over his body. And Ripken is like laughing his ass off, like this is the funniest thing in the world. And Ben McDonald, who was part of this, but was also part of Ripken would throw him to the ground occasionally and dig like a knuckle into his ribs. And the next day, Ben would have like bruises all over his rib cage but you couldn't hurt Ripken. As Ben told me once, I'm telling you, he cannot bruise. You cannot hurt him. That's who he is.
It's funny to know that behind the scenes, like as he's taking himself very seriously as a major leaguer and keeping himself in good shape, they're also just like jumping him in the locker rooms and things like that. And he's like potentially could like crack a rib just falling as these guys are mugging him. And all of that was, tolerated and endured through, more than 2,600 games. When did this streak sort of first pop up on your radar or sort of in your atmosphere as other writers, started to pay attention like, hey, like he's been in a long time without missing a game. Like we might be thinking about Lou Gehrig's record. When was that moment?
Well, for me, it was 1987 because by 1987, my second full year on the beat covering for the Baltimore Sun, Ripken had gone over 8,000 innings without missing an inning. So he went 3 years without coming out of a game. And I was in Boston one night late at the bar. Now, please don't take that one the wrong way, but it was late, and Cal Sr. was in there. The two of us, just the two of us. And he never opened up about personal things with the team, never. Certainly not off the record anywhere. But he and I are sitting there, and he looks at me, and I'm shocked he said this to me. He goes, they want me to take the kid out of the game. They want me to end the inning streak because they think there's nothing to benefit from it. And he looks at me and said, that kid should never come out of a game. Never. So like 4 nights later, they're in Toronto. I'm the beat writer. I'm covering the team. And the Blue Jays hit 10 home runs in the game. 10. It's a major league record. No team had ever hit 10 in a game before. No team has ever done it since. But they did it that night against the Orioles, and it's like 17-3, and it's the bottom of the 8th inning. And I look up, and now I'm writing like one of the biggest stories I've ever written. For the first time in Major League history, a team has hit 10 homers in a game. And I'm writing feverishly because we're getting close to deadline. And all of a sudden I look up and I look at the other writers and I go, oh my God, they're taking him out. So Ripken's inning streak ended that night in Toronto. And Ron Washington, who was the Angels manager until he got sick, went out and played shortstop in the bottom of the 8th inning. And that's how the inning streak ended. But by that point, I was relatively certain that Ripken was going to break Lou Gehrig's record. And we weren't even close. I mean, we were almost 10 years away, 8 years away from Lou Gehrig's record. 8 years playing every day. And the same Rene Gonzalez, who I quoted earlier, told me once, he said, yeah, I was there during the whole inning streak. He goes, we all knew that Ripken was going to break Gehrig's record back then because he said, we knew that was nothing for him. He said, because he's an alien. That's how he broke that record, and nobody else could do that.
Tim, do you recognize how early that is? I mean, just when you say that out loud to yourself, like 8 years before it even happens, are other writers, is anybody in baseball like in that moment with you, just like kind of being like, this guy has something that is very different than your average Major League Baseball player?
Look, I'm not taking any credit for this. Others were saying the same thing.
That's
Guys
crazy.
from the team were telling me the same thing. This wasn't a one singular observation. I had people telling me, oh, he'll break the record if he wants to, and if they'll let him. And that was really odd, is that, and this kind of troubled me a little bit. There were some people that came out when the Orioles were terrible in 87 and 88. Why don't you just give him a rest, you know? Well, my thinking always was, and I'm a little bit too defensive about these things, but Ripken was always the best shortstop for the game that night. Always. You take, with all due respect, Ron Washington, Ricky Gutierrez, somebody else, and put him at shortstop. You're not going to be as good a team. He was better defensively than all of them. And even if he wasn't swinging the bat very well, he was still more of a threat than anybody else. There was no reason to take him out of the game. And I refuse to believe you give one guy one night off, and then suddenly he's rejuvenated, and the next night he's going to get 3 hits and hit 2 homers. I don't think it works that way, but after time, it just became, hey, we're not even going to think about this. The kid's ready to play. Let him go.
So fast forward then to the early 1990s, because in the early 1990s, baseball is starting to go through some very tumultuous periods. George Steinbrenner, as a Yankees fan, right, we're very aware that he has caused some consternation in the game, the Dave Winfield incident. He's gotten himself banished. This is also the time, though, where all those prospects that we come to love and adore today as Yankees fans hit the system. But the strike happens. I mean, it feels like right as we've got these insane World Series moments in 92 and 93, just like almost classic World Series. It just like screeching halt to all this magic in 1994. What is that like, just sort of the moment in baseball before we get to the season that Cal inevitably breaks this record in? Like, what is that moment like?
Well, that moment was awful, and a lot of people knew it was coming. It was inevitable that there was going to be a strike, a lockout, a work stoppage, whatever you want to call it. And so when the game was shut, when everyone left in August of 1994, nobody was surprised. And I don't think anyone was really, really shocked that they never found a way to get that season started. It was awful. We did not play a World Series in 1994 because of a work stoppage. I was devastated, and so were the players. And it was such a great year that was going. Tony Gwynn was going to hit 400 that year. Jeff Bagwell and Frank Thomas both won MVPs that year. By the way, they were born on the same day, same year, and they won MVPs the same year. They were headed for some unbelievable numbers. We never got to see that. And most important, the Expos, I think, were on the way to not just winning the pennant, but I think they were going to win the World Series. And several years ago, I did a story for ESPN.com looking back at that season. And Felipe Alou told me, he was the manager of the Expos at the time. He said, we had the best team in baseball. We were going to win the World Series that year. And he said, and if we had won the World Series that year, baseball would still be in Montreal today, because people there would have said, oh my gosh, we have a world championship team. They would have built a new stadium for them, which they desperately needed. But when they lost that season, they lost the Expos. A lot of people firmly believe that. So I will never forget how depressing that was from mid-August through the time where they said, all right, no playoffs, no World Series. We were devastated. Everyone was devastated. I covered the AAA World Series in October that year. It was Richmond against Charlotte, the AAA World Series, just to show people, all right, they're still playing baseball. And as great as the games were, it wasn't the big leagues. I'll never forget when I covered, this is way off the topic, but when I covered that Charlotte-Richmond game series, I was in the Charlotte clubhouse, and they were watching Jeopardy. The players were watching Jeopardy in the private room, so I certainly wasn't allowed in there. But I'm walking by, and I look at the final Jeopardy answer, and it's poetry, okay? So 1 second later, some guy comes flying out, a player flying out of the clubhouse, the room where they're watching Jeopardy. And I look at Tim Jones, one of the infielders, and I said, did he get the final Jeopardy answer correct in poetry? And Tim Jones goes, no, we're baseball players. If you guess the final Jeopardy category, you win. So he guessed the final Jeopardy category is going to be poetry, and he went flying out of the office, out of the room, because he won. That's what I was doing instead of watching the World Series in 1994.
Was the for what it is, we could spend a lot of time, and perhaps I will with an episode in the future. But for the strike being what it was, and all the focus on the negative aspects of it, was it, at least looking back, like just nice to change up gears for a minute and cover different ball players and different sort of grind? Or were you just like, man, I'm missing this magic of October in the big leagues?
I didn't enjoy 1 second of anything other than the poetry story that I just told. The next spring, of course, we didn't even have Major League Baseball, and they brought in replacement players. It was a circus. It was a sideshow. Look, college baseball is great. Minor league baseball is great. I'm sorry, there is no substitute for the big leagues. And you will tell right away in 1995 or spring training, like, this is not Major League Baseball. So finally, of course, they get the thing settled. It cut the 95 season short. But it was so interesting because I just wrote a story on Cal Jr. and the anniversary of the streak. And he told me, among other things, he said, we know how much the strike really hurt the fans, and we often don't take care of the fans, even though we really hurt them. So he said, what can we do to repair this? What can we do as players to help the fans come back to the game? And that's when Ripken decided the best thing I can do is sign as many autographs as I possibly can. And that season, Patrick, from the time he showed up for spring training until the day the season ended, he signed every single night in every single ballpark for as many kids as he could. During the whole streak, I followed him around for an entire week. I never left his side. It was an amazing access that I was granted. But I watched him sign in absolute boiling hot heat on a Tuesday night in August in Baltimore. And he would sign for an hour and a half after games. And he would sign every autograph until every kid, every adult was gone. That was the way that he decided this is how we are going to try, at least, to repair the damage done by the 94 strike.
That's incredible to have that kind of self-awareness and also realizing, like, you can put the emotions of the entire world on your shoulders, but you can't really do much about that. So on an individual level, like, here's just what I can do. And like, what a powerful gesture, because like, I mean, we've seen it in really exacerbated and extreme ways, right? Like, kid gets a ball taken away from an outrageous fan, and then we get to see the sort of like, the what it means to the kid when things are finally made right. But like, Cal's out there basically, instead of having the ball ripped away from the kids in the adults' hands in the bleachers, like, we just had like the season ripped away. And so like, it's just cool to see the mindfulness of Cal Ripken. Every time, I find a new reason to like Cal. It's awesome.
So they missed about a month of the season. So they played, I should know this off the top of my head. Let's say they played 144 games, and he broke it on September 6th, though, and that's about 20. So he was maybe 120 games away. But here's how the season began. It began in Kansas City. This is so classic Cal Ripken. And so they're going to play opening day the next day in Kansas City. And Rick Sutcliffe, one of the great leaders of the Orioles, even though he didn't play there very long, invites everyone over to his house in Kansas City. And Sut, of course, who was a great athlete and a great basketball player, had a hoop in the yard. So they end up playing like 3-on-3 basketball at a cookout at Rick Sutcliffe's house the day before the season is going to begin. The season in which Ripken is going to break the most unbreakable record that we've ever seen. And instead of saying, nope, I better not play basketball at a cookout, what if I roll my ankle? He ends up dominating. I finally got him to tell me that he dunked a few times in a pickup game at Rick Sutcliffe's house. That's how the season began. But this is important, Patrick. As the season went on, everyone recognized, baseball is in big trouble now. People are not coming back. And it took Cal Ripken about 3 months of that season to recognize that his story was important for baseball, meaning the Orioles weren't necessarily winning back then, and he would go into a new city, and there would be a press conference with him about the streak. And he kept thinking, I don't want to do this. This should be about our team. This should not be about me. It took him about 3 months to finally figure out, because he's such a humble guy, that this is good for baseball. We need to sell something good. And we're selling somebody playing in all these games, and we're selling Lou Gehrig, one of the great players in the history of baseball. So once he became comfortable with this is okay to talk about this every day, it made it a whole lot easier for him moving forward that season.
It's always good when you can invoke the greats, right? Like not just like some of the guys who were really good a long time ago, but we're talking all-time greats. Like if you're trying to sell something, pulling Lou Gehrig out is not a name we should throw around lightly, right? He's obviously one of the all-times. So as we move into September and Cal has kind of brought this magic back and the fever pitch of it is about to crescendo, did you go into sort of like the Labor Day weekend, just kind of electric, knowing that it's like it's here, like you're like less than 10 games, less than 5 games? Like, what was it like to be both a fan of the game, as I know you are, and then also be a professional in the game? And I guess extra caveat, a professional in the game covering this moment. Like you're there in so many different capacities. What is Labor Day weekend like for you?
Well, it was amazing. And yes, I was there for the entire buildup. And I can't stress this enough. Being there for the buildup made 21-31 even greater. That Sunday, the Mariners were in town and they were all standing on the top step of the dugout, like cheering Cal Ripken when the banner went down for 21-28. Okay. I mean, they all recognize when that banner goes down the warehouse, it was an amazingly powerful moment. So here, the team Ripken is playing against are all standing on the top step of the dugout. The next day, of course, the Angels come to town, and Rex Hudler, former Oriole, is playing second base for the Angels. And when the fifth inning ends, and now it's an official game, he looks back and it goes to 2-1, 2-9. And Rex Hudler like could barely control himself. And I wrote this because he told me that night, he said he had to tell himself, Hud, don't cry. Crying is for later. Crying is for 21-31. Get yourself together. You're playing in the game. You're playing against him right now.
Yeah.
That's how it worked for even the players on the other team. So when you watch the anticipation, and then he hit a home run in 3 straight games leading up to 21-31. He hadn't hit a homer in 3 straight games in like 4 years. So it's typical Cal Ripken rising to the occasion at the biggest time. And by this point, people were like, this is incredible what we're watching. The weather was sensational every night when the banner was dropped. It was so cool. And 21-30, there was like a 5-minute delay where everyone celebrated and all that stuff. But we had no idea what was coming compared to 21-31 came. That changed everything, and nobody knew exactly what was going to happen.
So September 6th, 1995, the California Angels. Those are my favorite Angels that ever played in the major leagues, the California Angels.
Yeah.
But with those really strange mid-90s uniforms that I was personally not too much a fan of. I like the old school halos there. But so they're in town and the record is tied and the atmosphere is electric. And I remember being 9 years old, having gone through that sort of fan experience on TV the night that he tied it, and thinking that was going to be the most electric I've felt, seeing something, because New York Giants win a Super Bowl when I'm a kid, but I'm really young. And at this point in time, the Giants are terrible and the Yankees are still looking like the 80s Yankees. Donnie Baseball's, out of the game at this point. Things aren't going well, right? We still don't know what's coming for me as a New York Yankees fan. But, this is something that made me feel fantastic on the night of the 5th. And here I am the very next night, and I feel like the 5th became small potatoes.
Well, most pitchers realize the consequences of walking the number 9 hitter. And usually the number 9 hitter is the worst hitter in the lineup.
Popped him up. Manny Alexander out into right field. He's got it. And now it's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
Take us through the moment. So it's a pop fly, I believe, to right field that gives us the third out that makes it official. So what happens? Ball's in the glove. 21-31 is now an official game. We're halfway through the 5th inning. What is the moment like? What do you remember? just just anything you want. Tell us from your experience or just historically what happened. Just take us through it, Tim.
Right. But we have to go back a few hours because Ripken told me that he really had trouble sleeping the night before. So he gets home from 21:30 and it's like 2:30 in the morning and he can't sleep and he said I soaked the sheets and the pillow in my bed because I was sweating so profusely. And he said, I thought for a moment I had a virus, but in the end, I thought, well, this is just nerves. So it really started to get to him after 21:30. But he woke up in time, of course, to take Rachel, his daughter, age 5, to her first day of kindergarten. That also happened on September 6th, 1995. So he goes home and miraculously takes a quick nap. Then he comes to the ballpark, and by now it's complete bedlam. I mean, Frank Robinson's there, Brooks Robinson's there, Joe DiMaggio is there. I mean, it's an amazing, and President Clinton's there, Vice President Gore is there. It was an amazing night. So fifth inning comes, and we still don't know what to expect. But the final out is made in the top of the fifth, and down comes 2-1, 3-1.
son, Ryan, only 2 years old. His wife, Kelly, their daughter, Rachel, also there. The Yankee Clipper, Joe DiMaggio, Orioles Hall of Famer, Frank Robinson among those applauding. How about that shirt? 2,130 plus. Hugs and kisses for Daddy, is what it says on the back. And a kiss for Rachel. What a moment.
And again, powerful is the only word I can use, because we were all like tingling, like what's going to happen now? Well, Bobby Bonilla of the Orioles, after Ripken had taken come out of the dugout for 5 curtains calls, finally pushes him out on the field and says, you got to take a lap around the ballpark. So Ripken gets on the warning track and he runs deliberately around the stadium. It took 22 minutes. He is pointing at people that I know he knows who they are, and he probably knows their name. He is patting his heart like, I can't even believe this is happening, and my heart is pounding so hard right now. People are weeping in the crowd. So he runs all the way around. Before he gets to the Angels' third base dugout, 2 umpires run up and shake his hand. I believe it was Al Clark and Larry Barnett. to shake Cal Ripken's hand in the middle of a game. And then he shook the hand of every California Angel on the way to home plate. And the only one he didn't shake his hand was Rod Carew, because he gave him a giant hug, because they had played against, these are two superstar players. When he got back to home plate after the inning, George Fabregas, the catcher of the Angels, went up and just shook his hand. And George told me after the game, he said, I was just so proud to be a part of this. And that's how all the Angels felt. They just wanted to be a part of a moment like this. And of course, he had already hit a home run in the game on a 3-0 pitch from Sean Bosky, which just threw the place completely out of control. But after that 22 minutes, he went and hugged his wife and children. And like I said, people were just crying in the stands. And I asked Ripken about it, just recently in the story that I rewrote for the anniversary. And he said, when you're at a game, you really don't have time to look up in the stands and look at the people. You shouldn't be doing that because you're concentrating on the game. But he said that trip around the bases reminded me how important the fans really are as part of all of this. And he told me that's something that I've really gathered through all of this. It isn't just the event, it's the shared experiences that we all have from the event. And all those fans that he, made eye contact with or slapped their hand or signed their autograph the night before or whatever, he still remembers that stuff. And that's the shared experience. And he said that was as human a moment, that's the word he used, as human a moment that I've ever spent on a major league field was the night of 21-31.
Oh, a couple things before we wind down here. I want to kind of point out one. I think that when you talk about the magic and sort of the electric nature of the game and this moment, all those things, it kind of, we talk about how special things are, the opposing team, opposing fans. I think that's one of the things that is very unique about baseball is this, like, people recognizing moments regardless of it's going against my team, and they respect the moment, they're a part of a moment, they understand they're witnessing a moment, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But going back to something that in preparation for talking to you and kind of preparing this production of this little episode here, it reminded me that a few weeks ago I was kind of lamenting how technology has progressed to the point where it has accidentally, in a way, remove some of the elements of this magic. And like, you'll remember very vividly the aesthetic. This is the mid 1990s, and flashbulb photography is the way photography is done. And so when big moments happen, there's just that insane blipping, endless lightning going off of all those flashbulbs. You used to see it at kickoff of NFL games like the Super Bowl, things like that. And I vividly remember the band, like, first of all, from the moment the pop fly landed in right field, I think it started. But when the banner came down, from that moment until the left, it was just like, I feel like it had to have been blinding for a moment. Can you kind of talk about just like how that has kind of changed? Because I know you've experienced big moments in baseball since then that are less flashy and in your face.
Right. Well, everyone's cell phone does the same job now, maybe even better than a flashbulb did back then. But yes, I remember those days. I was always completely taken by those days. First pitch of a World Series game. I've covered every one of them since 1981. And yes, I miss those days because it was such a human experience, as we talked about. But that's what people did. They took pictures, and the same people are taking the same pictures today, but they're done with their cell phone. So yeah, I understand what you're saying about technology has changed some things. And I asked Ripken about did anything happen that night that when you go back and look at the tape, and he said at the 25-year anniversary, not the 30, he went back and watched the entire game. And there were so many things he didn't know and didn't recognize because he was playing in the game. Like, he watched the broadcast. I think it was on ESPN. It could have been somewhere else because it was broadcast several different places, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And he said Earl Weaver came on, and said some really nice things about me. Like he's surprised that Earl Weaver had some nice things to say about Cal Jr. But these are the things that he had never seen before or heard before because they happened during the broadcast and he's playing in the game. So for him to see stuff 25 years later and say, wow, I didn't know that happened, that was pretty cool. That made the experience after 25 years even more interesting for him.
Well, let's stretch it 5 more years to 30. So very recently, my wife was able to get a hold of tickets to a random baseball game, as she says. Although you and I both know my wife, she is a much more thoughtful person than that. So it was not a surprise to me that, knowing that I'm a huge Cal Ripken Jr. fan, that she got a hold of tickets for this moment. So 5 years go by from the moment you're talking about. Now we're at 30 years this year. And so we get to go to the game on September 6th. And, going back to that baseball fans and baseball magic and just recognition of a moment, as we are all living all night long in the nostalgia of 30 years of this moment, right? It's on the scoreboard between innings. You've got messages coming from so-and-so who is here, which, by the way, I got a John Miller factoid I learned that I'll share in a minute. Perhaps you can elaborate on if you're aware. But, there was this time that came where I looked at the scoreboard sometime around the 6th, 7th inning, and I realized that Yamamoto was throwing a no-hitter. And what was really funny was I said out loud, all I said was, "Oh my God, babe, look at the scoreboard." And the guy in front of me said, "Don't say it out loud." And he's wearing a nose shirt, because he's just kind of like, this is a special thing. No hitters are special, even when they're against your team. So the night that Cal gets to celebrate 30 years of this very, very likely unbreakable record, this just majesty that really helped baseball come back from a brink of sorts. The Orioles, once again on September 6th, delivered insane baseball magic. So were you at the game a couple weeks ago?
No, there's a long story there, Patrick. My daughter Kelly,
We
who
got your
has
tickets.
2 children who go to your wife Danielle's school. Kelly and Mark, my son-in-law and my daughter, went to a wedding in Atlanta. So Pop took care of the 2 kids that night with Cat's help, but Pop was the primary caregiver. So I have a job to do. So I felt terrible that I wasn't there for Cal Ripken's 30th anniversary, and I felt even worse when I realized that Yamamoto's got a no-hitter going with 2 outs in the 9th inning. And I'm trying to follow this while trying to get kids to bed. And we don't even have a TV that can get Masson in my daughter's house because, like so many other people, they just have some. I don't even know how to use the TV in their house. I'm too old to figure it out. So the point is, what happened was Jackson Holliday, of course, breaks up the no-hitter with a home run, and that makes the score 3-1. And the Orioles come back and win the game 4-3 in that inning. One of the most amazing comebacks. There's no way around this in Major League history. So they become the first team since 1961. That's as far back as the Elias Sports Bureau could go to be certain of this. 1 out away from losing the game and 1 out away from being no hit. And then they come back to win the game. So that game had not happened since at least 1961. And it happens on the night that we celebrate the 30th anniversary of Cal Ripken breaking Lou Gehrig's record. And also on September 6th, Eddie Murray hit home run number 500 in Baltimore. So September 6th and Camden Yards has some real special meaning to a lot of people, but especially to our best Oriole fans. What was it like, in obviously a very quiet sense, since you're a grandparent, when you realized the insane swing that had just occurred? Like, I told my wife as we were leaving, I said, I can't tell you in my entire life that I've ever personally witnessed a more bonkers experience in baseball, where it went from one version of history to that. So, like, how were you, where you were like, oh my goodness, I've like partially missed this like insane experience? No, I didn't partially missed it. I totally missed it because I couldn't even watch it on TV. It was awful. I must have gotten 20 text messages from friends who were at the game. And most of the text began with, "I'm sure you're here tonight also," but I didn't even know what to do. I stopped responding because I was too embarrassed to say, "No, I'm not there. I have bigger things. I am where I'm supposed to be. I'm taking care of my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old grandchildren. It was the right thing to do. I would do it again tomorrow." However,
Tim, you almost got 21 text messages because I almost texted you when there was like one out in the 9th inning. I just wanted to be like, "Are you here for the no-hitter?"
imagine that. Imagine that. My cousin Amy, big baseball fan. Her dad, Uncle Bob, is one of the great baseball fans ever. He and my father taught me so much about the game. Amy wrote to me after the game, "That is the most exciting game that I've seen since Delman Young's hit in the playoffs several years ago. Huge playoff against, not important how they won, everything else. Delman Young got a huge 3-run double, and Amy just decided to tell me this is the most exciting game that I've seen in like 13 years. And that only made me feel worse because there I am trying to make sure that 2 little kids go to sleep and I protect them through the night. So everything worked out at home. And I'm so thrilled that you and my cousin Amy and all those other people got treated to another magical night, starting with the Ripken anniversary and finishing with the way that game ended. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Well, Tim, we know that it's the busiest time of year for you as a baseball writer. We do appreciate you squeezing us in right as the regular season's winding down and that magical postseason is upon us. I think my Yankees are going to squeak in this year.
So not for the short sight, but for the long sight, because you do have a pretty good track record. I mean, you got the Ripken thing 8 years out, right? Personally, I don't think that the 2,600 game streak will ever be beaten. But my question, I guess, is what's next? What is the next record to break, and who is the next great that you kind of see on the horizon if you see one?
Great question.
No one's going near Cal Ripken Jr.
That's my thought.
Obviously, Cy Young won 500 games. No one's going near anything like that. But it really is time to recognize just how great our players are today. They are bigger, stronger, faster, and probably better than ever. They overpower the game with their physical gifts. To answer your question, the next record to fall, Paul Skeens is going to break that record. Now, I'm not sure what the record's going to be because it's usually a longevity record. But I'm telling you, fellas, I have never seen a pitcher come to the big leagues and have this kind of impact like he has. And I saw Fernando Valenzuela. I was covering in 81. I saw Dwight Gooden. I saw a lot of those starts. He was unbelievable. But Paul Skeens has done it even longer than Valenzuela did it, and now slightly longer than Gooden did it. So he's the guy you have to keep your eye on because of his age, because of his talent level, and because already of his track record. It's just phenomenal that we watch someone who's this big, this strong, this wildly competitive with this kind of stuff and this kind of mindset on how you're supposed to pitch in the big leagues. He is the next great pitcher that we will see in the big leagues.
Tim, thanks for joining us, man.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, fellas. I'm so glad that you guys got to see 21, 31, 30 years later. It was tremendous, but I will say it one more time. 21-31, when it actually happened in 95, was the most powerful night I've ever spent in a major league ballpark, and I still get chills thinking about it.
Parker, how absolutely amazing was that just trip down memory lane?
I'm still freaked out about the blood blister thing.
Oh my goodness!
If we're ever, you and me, man.
No.
If I'm ever in that situation, I never want you to do that for me, and I will never do that for you.
No,
okay? I promise. That's just something.
My skin crawled off my body and left this room during that part of the conversation.
Yeah,
I always knew
that was
Oh,
Pretty
man.
wild.
I always knew Cal Ripken Sr. was a tough son of a bitch, but that goes so far beyond baseball. Like, that is like the only person who I've ever even remotely heard to be rumored to be that tough is an old man who currently lives in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. So I am I'm a little just blown away by the fact that the Ripkens are just born tough, built tough, like some truck commercial I can't remember. But so
I have a question for you, actually,
ahead.
for you, because you were there. Was Cal at the game?
Oh,
at
yes.
his 30th year?
For his 30th anniversary, absolutely.
Yeah.
There was a big
Because
ceremony.
I was like, he's kind of local, right? So
he also is part owner of the Orioles now. That is something that has changed
Oh.
in the interim years as he has bought into the Orioles ownership. So
Got it.
he is
I
not
should have known
just
that. I'm sorry.
Yes, take a lap, Parker Russell.
Sorry.
But
I'll
he
be right
is
back.
he is not just Orioles royalty because of his time playing there and representing the franchise as just a model player and citizen.
Right.
He's now partly in the class of the bosses, running around Camden Yards at Oriole Park.
Right.
So, yeah, he was there. And then in the fifth inning, because baseball records, a baseball game is official between frames of the fifth inning. So after the top of the fifth inning, it goes into the record books that this game has been played to the, quote, official minimum time. So if there's, say, a rain delay after the fifth inning that goes on excessively to the point where we can't resume it, they'll just call the game a rain-shortened game at 5 or 6 or 7, whatever innings. So it's 5.
Did they trot him out at all? Did they bring
So
him out?
yes, so in 1995, right, like as Tim was saying, you got guys like Bobby Bonilla and Rafi Palmeiro that are pushing Cal out of the dugout, and it turns into this 22-minute long lap around the field. Here in 2025, 30 years later, Rafael Palmeiro's there again. They basically, for a couple of reenactors that we are, Parker, I know a reenactment when I see one, and they basically reenacted a portion of that entire lap and moment. So Cal came up for a curtain call, and then Rafael Palmeiro pushed him out further into the warning track, and Cal kind of trotted a good ways down the right field line, shaking hands with fans, talking to his family, things like that. And it was really cool to live in that. The lighting was great. For me, man, personally, before we get to the game itself, the best part of the nostalgia for me were two very simple things. They had the 2131 banner back on the warehouse.
The same one?
Yes. Camden Yards has a very iconic brick warehouse in right field. Separated right field and the brick warehouse are separated by Utah Street. So this is a very iconic place in baseball. And during the streak, especially as he approached the moment of breaking the record, as you heard Tim talking about the banners, these banners were displayed hanging down the facade of the brick warehouse. So seeing the 2131 banners back was great, awesome. And then, today in the 21st century, the scoreboard that you keep, that you watch for entertainment, the stats, anything between the innings during the game, who's batting, all that stuff, is such a advanced piece of technology now that they're essentially just like giant, like, I don't know, I want to say like plasma TVs, but I feel like that's so outdated, but like just giant plasma TVs that are up there so we can see to the, the millimeter like measurements of things. So they're high quality. Right. But in the 90s, we had a lot of scoreboards that were still old school, and they were like black screens with white bulbs and very basic animations. And during Cal's streak, this is what Camden Yards still very heavily featured. And so they went back to some of those old school animations on the video boards, and it just felt so right, having this digital version of like 1995 Cal Ripken cartoon winking at you. It was just so cool.
It's kind of like when you go back and you play Oregon Trail now on like on a modern computer or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the nostalgia was great just about the moment itself, and then between innings, as I said to Tim, there was this cool moment that came where they were doing all this like, hey, just want to say congratulations to Cal, 30 years, what a memory, blah, 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 things like that. And one of those messages came from John Miller, who used to do play-by-play for the Orioles. I believe it was on HTS, but he was definitely on the call that I was watching. So he sends this message from out in San Francisco, where he is now, and he's basically saying, same thing, right? Like, congratulations, what a record. And he shares a little factoid, and it blew my mind. So this game is a huge deal, right? So as you remember Tim Kurkjian saying that everybody in baseball royalty is there, even the president and vice president of the United States are there. President Clinton and Vice President Gore are in attendance, and there comes a point in time during the game where President Clinton has made his way into the broadcast booth, and he is sitting there with John Miller. And it's really entertaining because there are times where basically Bill Clinton just took over the call and, basically just like ground ball to second, and he got him at first, right? And here's a fastball. And it's like, it was kind of fun and kind of cheeky. But then came this moment.
Send an order down there, will you? Ripken's always trying to win the game. If he throws him the ball, he'll take it. Yeah, he will. He'll take it. He'll take whatever they give him. But if he throws one down the middle here, even on 3-0, he'll still swing at it. Yeah. Let's see. 3-0 to count. Here it comes. Swing at it. Gone. Goal. Yes.
So on that call, Parker, there are unmistakably two voices. And then Cal makes that contact, and we hear the unmistakable sounds of a classic home run call. Yeah. Do you know what I learned while I was at this 30th anniversary celebration game?
What's that?
That the primary voice that comes rising over the top of all voices volume-wise is not John Miller calling a baseball call. You hear him actually subdued and in the background kind of muffled. The voice
is that Bill J. Clinton
that overrides everybody, that says, get out, that is the sitting president of the United States of America.
That's amazing. I mean, what an impact, though. I mean, that just kind of goes to show you, like, it really, when we call it the national pastime here in the States, it's it's a big deal. I sounded a little bit like
you did. You slipped into your little slick Willie there.
It's a national pastime.
But it is funny because we've talked about the players and the fans for other teams in this moment, but here we have the leader of the United States of America.
Yeah.
Also for a minute just putting that hat to the side and just being like, I am also witnessing this insane and beautiful moment in baseball history. And then when Cal swings on a 3-0 pitch, which, by the way, for our youngsters out there, only swing on a 3-0 pitch if your coach tells you to. And then, coach, if you're sending a kid the green light on a 3-0 pitch, you better be ready to take the heat for what happens if it goes south. But I can't believe he swung on a 3-0 pitch. But, man, jacking it, home run, iconic game, iconic moment in an iconic game. Oh, my God, nostalgia. So 30 years later, here we are witnessing, another bit of baseball magic, except this time it's seemingly about to go against the Baltimore Orioles, right? Somewhere around the late 6th inning, early 7th inning, I looked at the scoreboard and I went, and then the guy, I said, look at the scoreboard, and the guy in front of me says, don't say it out loud, because, right, in baseball superstition, you don't want to say the thing out loud, otherwise you're going to spoil it, right? So everybody kind of starts to tune in. And you can feel it right in the same kind of moment. Like, I don't think like I was first. I think I was a part of this moment that everybody in the stadium started to kind of simultaneously plug in that Yoshinobu Yamamoto is going to throw a no-hitter. Now, he had walked a couple guys in the game, so it cannot be considered a perfect game, which is 27 batters up, 27 batters retired all in a row. But this is a game where runners have only reached because of a walk. Not a single hit has been given up. So it's a 3-0 shutout going into the 9th inning. It is a no-hitter. And I just remember going into the 9th inning before anything else happens, just being like, this is nutty. I've never seen a no-hitter like in person in my entire life. Like, this is, I know they make me feel electric when I watch them on TV. I'm about to see one in person, hopefully. And it's great because as a Yankee fan, I'm not there with the team that I'm emotionally, invested with, right? I hate the Los Angeles Dodgers this season, right? They destroyed us in the World Series, so boo on them. And there I got to dig out my vintage Cal Ripken Jr. jersey and, put on my Frederick Keys hat to make it clear I'm not an Orioles fan, but just kind of be in this moment. So 3 outs to go. Then there's an out. So 2 outs to go, and then there's an out. And I'm like, oh my God, we are 1 out away from a no-hitter. So you look around the stadium, nobody is sitting down. Just absolutely buzzingly electric, just flowing through the stadium, just volts of it. You can feel it pulsing through everybody. And I didn't realize this little nugget until as I'm walking to the car later, just thinking about all of this stuff. But lucky streak of my own that I have lucky streak of my own that I've experienced in my entire life of going to professional baseball games. I have seen a home run hit at every major league game I have ever attended.
Oh, nice.
So going into this
If
game,
it had been a Nats game, that streak will be broken.
well, I went to a Nats game once where Ryan Zimmerman hit a walk-off home run that landed in the seat literally right in front of me and my cousin. So I have seen a Nationals home run.
Nice, all right.
So here we are, and we're going into the top of the 9th inning. It's 3-0. Not a single run the Dodgers have is from a home run. I'm not really thinking about this. I just, that's just what it is. And it occurs to me walking out of the stadium that I was like, man, thank God for what happened next, because my streak stayed alive. I've now seen a home run continuously in every MLB game I've ever been to. So it's 3-0. There's 3 outs the Dodgers need to get. There's 2 outs the Dodgers need to get. There's 1 out the Dodgers need to get. And Jackson Holliday comes to the plate. And hits a home run to right center field, which not only kills the no-hitter, but it breaks the shutout, and the stadium is insane. It is just like a beehive that has just been agitated with happiness. Nobody's mad, except for Dodgers fans. Everybody's going crazy. Score's now 3-1. And my brain is like, well, if you're going to ruin this no-hitter, you got to win the game.
Sure.
And the next batter comes up, hits a deep fly ball to left field, lands off the wall, got a runner on second. Then they hit a guy. Then they walk a guy, and suddenly the bases are loaded.
Oh my God, we are in walk-off territory now. We are legitimately in walk-off territory.
Mind you, the Dodgers have had 2 outs this entire time. All they need to do is catch 1 ground ball, 1 pop fly, get 1 guy at the plate. They just need to get 1 out, and they still win this game, right? No hitters ruined, shutouts ruined, but whatever. There's still 1 out from getting the W, right? And with the bases loaded and 2 outs, 2 outs, well, baseball fundamentals again, 2 outs, you run on anything. Doesn't matter. Don't look at the ball. As soon as the crack of the bat happens, you just dig hard and run. And I can tell you the man on second base, as I don't know the Orioles roster like that, but whoever was the runner on second base definitely paid attention to his fundamentals, because a little bloop single drops in shallow center field, and the guy that ends up coming around from second base to score proves to be the winning run. It is a walk-off game, but he was on the heels of the guy that left from third base. 4-3, Orioles win, walk-off win, fireworks going nuts, stadium absolutely rocking. I could feel like I could see the air just like pulsing, the stadium. Like it wasn't shaking the same way, but old RFK Stadium, where the former Washington Redskins used to play, used to physically shake when the fans would get going. And it kind of just gave me those vibes. And Oh my God,
Yeah.
it felt so good to just kind of take in that insanity.
Well, like like Tim was just talking about, I mean, this is a historic night too. That hadn't happened since at least 61, if not longer.
Right, and I can tell you, like,
This
I'm
is
not
a
thinking
historic
about that actively, and that's why Tim is the legend who he is, because he
Yes.
thinks with that kind of context. But I just remember thinking, and I'm glad I didn't text him. I thought about texting him, but I would have, I guess, rubbed salt into that one. But I just, kind of put this perfect bow on the memory of being a 9-year-old kid on this dark forest green carpet in my parents' living room in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and watching on a channel that doesn't even exist anymore. If you say HTS, Home Team Sports, only a very small portion of our listeners is going to understand that. But 30 years later, I was thinking about those things again and living in that moment. And it reinforced how special baseball is. And as we're going into this postseason, and I hope Baseball Magic carries the team I love, the New York Yankees, to another World Series championship. I thought it would be fun to just kind of revisit our conversation with Tim and Baseball Magic and talk about Cal Streak and things like that. So Parker, when we talk about Baseball Magic, since the first conversation we had with Tim, have you encountered any new Baseball Magic, or have you just grown more appreciative of the game as a whole? Because I know, again, not a huge baseball guy.
I would say it's more of a huge appreciation for the game as a whole. I've since our first conversation with Tim, I have gone to another Nats game, and it's just so much, it's just so much fun. The atmosphere is so great. Let me ask you a question, actually, 2 questions. The first one, and this is not to get anybody's dander up, but this is going to be are you ready for a controversial topic? This is going to be really controversial.
Yes.
Of the 2 stadiums, which stadium do you prefer? Having been to both.
Camden Yards, 100%.
Yeah, you think
100%.
so?
Yeah, absolutely. Because Camden Yards is now old enough of a stadium that it gives you nostalgia for stadiums that haven't existed in a long time.
One other question for you. I guess I'll consider you our senior sports correspondent. How's that sound? What now? We heard Tim's predictions or not predictions for the postseason, and I know what you want to happen. I know what you want to have happen.
I always want the Yankees to win the World Series.
Well, of course, right? Who doesn't want their team to win? What do you see playing out for any predictions for this postseason?
I literally am with Tim. This postseason is completely wide open. The Dodgers, who have bought more than you should ever buy in baseball, have stumbled in ways and looked more mortal than ever. The Yankees are dragging themselves in. Toronto looks good. It's completely wide open, man. I don't know. I think the reality is inevitably the Dodgers have just got so much talent on their team, they'll probably run and do it. But you know what? Maybe just once, the Yankees will not disappoint me and take a run at things here, but we'll see.
I'll make one prediction. I'm going to make a rare prediction, and I think it's going to come true. Are you ready?
Sure.
I don't think that the Nats are going to do it this year.
They're already eliminated, buddy.
I know.
They're eliminated. The shirts, the teams we are both wearing today have been eliminated. In fact, on the day of this recording is the day the Baltimore Orioles have been eliminated from.
Oh, they were
the
eliminated
2025 postseason. Yes, so they are not going to the October show.
That just goes to show you, anything can happen.
Anything
is it a great game or what? Am I allowed to say that?
So that's obviously. So we want to thank Tim Kurkjian for joining us. Join him and his son Jeff on their podcast. Is this a great game or what? And thanks for joining us on our podcast. Visit both of these 2 shows on your favorite podcast apps. Leave 5-star ratings and reviews for both Tim and Jeff, as well as myself and Parker. And then make sure you share the shows with people that you know would enjoy these topics. Obviously, our history is very broad, and their conversations with baseball appeal to much more than just the analytical fan of the game, but people who like the history, the funny moments, the sad moments, the human moments. So make sure you're sharing both those shows. Search for us by looking on your social media apps under the History Things Podcast or at the History Things Podcast. Email Parker and I, historythingspodcast@gmail.com. I've had a great time talking about Baseball Magic. I'm very excited for the 2025 postseason and to continue our conversation with baseball into next season. So for our guest today, Tim Kurkjian, for my co-host Parker Russell, I'm Pat McGuire. This has been the History Thing podcast saying we will catch you all later.
See you next time.